Hello and welcome to the YouTube podcast series of Dinesh Wada. I'm Hilton Supra, the Vice Chairman of Studium Group, and I'm pleased to conduct this interview on his behalf with Sandeep Singhania, where we will interview people who are changing the world, people that are inspiring us and the world with their achievements and creativity, their acumen, their use of technology. In previous interviews, we have interviewed nearly 200 amazing people and achieved more than 10 million views. The interview series is a partnership with our platforms Open Business Council, Cities ABC, Fashion ABC, and our Metaverse ABC platform, where we're using fourth industrial revolution based technologies on our platform and the ability to employ these to use truth and trust as the backbone, utilizing blockchain and the deployment of data analytics, AI, and machine learning. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Sandeep Singhania, who has a bachelor's degree in computer science and has been a professional program for many years. When he characterizes himself as a software developer, it's a lot broader than that. He's really an engineer of blockchain and a consultant who loves to work and solve problems and exciting new projects. He likes to meet new people from different cultures and backgrounds. So Sandeep is a blockchain enthusiast who's helped these teams adapt their use of blockchain and technology in the projects that they're working on. He's been focusing on and his energies towards using blockchain technology to solve significant problems in terms of business and the business world, in terms of transparency and trust. And one of the main goals was to bring the diversity of technology and promote the widespread adoption of the technology today. And in doing so, he co-founded a company. And this company is QuickSwap, which he founded back in 2020 in the height of the pandemic. So welcome, Sandeep. It's a great pleasure to have you on our show.
Thanks, Hilton. Thanks for the wonderful introduction of mine. And thanks to you. Thanks to Dennis for having me here. I'm privileged to be here. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
No, we're delighted to have you. So in terms of your background and your career, you are currently in India and you've been there throughout your career. But tell us a little bit, who is Sandeep? Where are you from? And what are the challenges and opportunities you've had in your journey to date that really brought you to where you are today?
Cool. So yeah, as you said, I'm from India and right now I'm in New Delhi, right? So New Delhi is the capital of India and that's where I live right now, right? So as you told everyone in my introduction, I am an engineer by heart, right? I love developing any and all softwares, right? So I did my graduation in computer science in 2013 and then I started working for some major organizations like Dell International Services, right? So over there, I spent almost 3 years, honing up my software development skills. But then I realized I want to do something else in the life, right? So that's when, in 2017, I guess, yeah, I left all my 9 to 6 jobs, and I wanted to do something new at that particular time. So, so I was figuring out what to do next, and that's when I bumped into the blockchain technology. So at that time, technology was still very new. Ethereum was very new. Bitcoin was, I would still consider it to be very new at that particular time, right? So I moved into this technology because at that time I realized this is an early stage technology. And if I can get into it, one day I can be, one of the OGs of this particular technology. That's the idea behind me entering into this technology. I was looking for a technology which is very new, which will have a high level global impact and which is very new, right? So that's why I entered into this technology. I started developing software for multiple clients across the globe. So I had clients like OpenBazaar, I'm also part of Paraswap team. Then I worked with in healthcare industry as well, right? I worked with some ICO companies as well in the early days of 2017, right? So I did a lot of work, right? I worked with a gaming company as well, right? I worked with Polygon, with Ethereum, a lot of different technology and products out there, right? Mm-hmm. So while working on all these products, I realized in 2020 that layer 2s or side chains will have their own impact because the gas price, the transaction cost on layer 1 solutions like Ethereum and Bitcoin, it was increasing because of the increasing volume of transactions on these platforms, right, in 2020. And the prices of the tokens were also increasing. So at one point of time, Ethereum was somewhere or like $80-85 in March 2020. Then suddenly in July or August of 2020, same year, it was 400 to 450 US dollars, right? So
Yes.
it was an exponential increase, right? And similarly, the volume was increasing, the transaction was increasing. So the transaction cost was also increasing, because on these layer ones, you have a very limited computational power, right? And you have to divide that across the entire planet. So like logic is very simple. Higher the demand, and the supply is like constant, so the cost increases, for per transaction cost increases, and that started happening.
So, I mean, you've just introduced yourself. You have an inquiring mind. You like to solve problems. But let me take you back to when you were growing up at school and starting to learn working with computers and things like that. Tell us a little bit about Sameep when he was a boy and growing up, and that inquiring mind, and your first use of technology. Was it through the smartphone or was it through a computer?
Okay, cool. So I did all my schooling, mostly in a residential school, right? So since the very beginning, I think when I was 7 or 8 years old, I went to the hostel, right? And there was a school in a mountain area of India called like Nainital, right? So I studied there for 9 years, and like I was like 24/7 with my friends and my teachers and everywhere, right? So it was there actually when I started, getting more curious about the computer technology, like computer science, right? So I still remembered when I was in my class 10th, I think it was, the 10th standard, when I first learned more about these programming languages, right? So I still remember, I chose, so there was a course called computer course, right? And it had two options. Either I could choose Visual Basic or I could choose C++. So I initially chose Visual Basic, I still remember, but within a month or so, I got bored, with that particular technology. It was like, very, very boring. So then I realized I want to move to something else. And then I chose C++. And I mean, like, that's when my journey started. And I really loved that particular language, right? So in my 10th, 11th, 12, like 3 years in my school after that, taking up that course, I built up a lot of projects, and then I went to the college after my schooling, completed. And even in the college, I decided to choose computer science, right? And since like from the very beginning, like from the very first year, I was very much into, developing projects for my college, participating in multiple, webinars hosted by, or multiple hackathons hosted by different companies, big companies like Microsoft, Google, or IBM, right? So since then, like from there, I would say like from that 10th standard, my teachers inculcated this idea of being a computer programmer, right? And I was like always curious to learn like what next I can do, or like what new thing can I learn in this particular domain, right? So like I think that's where the route has been,
So what was when you were at school, what was the biggest achievement in terms of program? Did you create any particularly programs which had great utility, or anything that was, it may not exist today, but what was an inspiring development?
See, I still remember at that time, I didn't have very sophisticated laptops. So my first, touch up with this technology was not the smartphone. It was, I think it was a Lenovo laptop, I would say, which had almost like 128 MB RAM at that time, right? So yeah, so my entire goal of like, at that time, I still remember I developed a software in C++, which was like a calculator, right? So my team, my school needed a software, which works on all kind of systems at that particular time. So I developed that particular calculator for them. Like that was my one of the first projects I did in this industry, I would say. And then from there on, like I moved forward, I developed a couple of websites for my school at that time. And then when I moved to college, I developed a college like a library management software for my college. And then I participated in an IBM international competition there. I ran some projects, and they went up to like top 15, right? And since then, like the journey has been like just awesome.
Yeah. So the thing is about technology, you have this inquiring and inquisitive mind. And you touched a little bit upon it in your introduction. But when you look at the way in which technology has developed today, so you've been involved in ICOs, you've been focusing on leading edge stuff in terms of using blockchain. I just want to ask you one particular question. People talk about blockchain and, it's become, a buzzword. Okay. And of course, there's the main, it's a technology. I just want to ask you a very, very simple question. If you could explain to our audience, in your opinion, what is blockchain? And how do you see blockchain evolving into the future?
I mean, like, that's a very good question. And I think a lot of people fail to explain what blockchain really is, right? I'll try my best, right? But okay, so to understand it in a very layman language, I mean, like, the way I understand it is, I'm from a business background, right? My father used to do business. My grandfather used to do business. Like, my 7 generations are doing business, right? So in business, they used to maintain a ledger, right? In all businesses, you do maintain a ledger, whether it's a digital ledger or it's a physical ledger, right? All across the globe. In that particular ledger, you make entries, right? If you're doing, let's assume I'm doing some business with you, I'm selling you some stuff, right? So I'll make an entry into my ledger that I'm selling, let's say, 100 apples to Hilton at this price, right? And then assume I'm going to buy, let's say, 200 apples from some X person at this price, right? So all the entries I make in a ledger and I create a ledger, right? That's how it works. And if I want to delete any entry, I cannot delete that entry, right? I have to make a reverse entry or something else to basically, counter that particular entry, which is a wrong entry, right? But there is no way to simply rub it off because it's written by pen, it's on a paper, you can cut it, but everybody can see if somebody is looking into the ledger that that particular entry has been cut, right? And they can ask you questions. I think blockchain is just a digital version of that particular ledger. To understand it in a very layman terms, in blockchain, you record transactions, whatever you do with a counterparty. If I'm doing any transaction with you, I'll record in a blockchain. I can record in a ledger. The only difference is blockchain is it's a digital entity and that's a physical entity, right? Mm-hmm. And on blockchain as well, you cannot remove a transaction if it's written somewhere. So if by mistake I send you some asset on blockchain, I cannot remove that transaction. I have to come to you and say, hey, Hilton, I sent you, let's say 100 BTC. Can you give it back to me? And then you have to send another transaction to reverse that particular transaction, right? To counter that transaction. So I think in a very layman terms, that physical ledger, when it's brought to digital world, it's blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. To understand in a very layman terms. The only difference between that physical ledger and blockchain is, in case of that physical ledger, everybody used to maintain their own version, right? So if I'm doing business with you, I have my own version. You must be maintaining your own version, and some third party must be maintaining their own version as well. And now, if some dispute happened between me and you, let's assume I say, hey, I paid you $100. It's in my ledger, but you say, no, it's not in my ledger, So now we have to somehow figure out how to resolve that dispute. But in case of blockchain, since it's a global ledger, it's not someone's like a single entity's ledger. It's a global ledger where everybody makes an entry. So that if some dispute happens, we can check the ledger, this entry is there, and this is validated by all the participants of this ledger. So
it's very important. The very important word you use is validation. So there's a validation process, and you and I know that there's 2 processes. One which is proof of work, and then the other one is proof of stake. For our audience, could you just briefly explain the difference between what you mean by proof of work and proof of stake?
So there are multiple validation protocols out there, or multiple ways to validate whether a particular transaction is a valid transaction or not, right? So if I'm transferring, let's say 1 BTC to Hilton, whether I own that BTC or not, I mean, like, somebody needs to validate that, and then somebody needs to transfer that 1 BTC from my account to Hilton's account, right? By executing that transaction. Mm-hmm. I think that's something which the entire network does, or validators in the network does. And now there are multiple ways of doing that, right? So one of the ways, proof of work, another is like proof of stake, another one is PPOS, like delegated proof of stake, then there is POET, proof of elapsed time, then there is POA, proof of authority. But the most famous ones, like, which are used by almost every, public blockchain out there, is proof of work. And then second next famous one is like proof of stake, which Ethereum is going to move, very, very, very soon in the future. So in proof of work, what needs to be done is, so see, anybody can come onto the blockchain right now on BTC and they can become a miner, or they can become a validator and start validating the transactions, right? But in that case, even, a malicious party can become a miner, right? And I can start validating my own transactions. So to counter act that those particular parties, these validation protocols are used, right? Either it's proof of work or it's proof of stake. Again, like the validation mechanism is same, but how to prove that my validation is true and someone else validation is wrong, right? That's how we prove it through proof of work. So in proof of work, if I want to say that I am a validator, I have to perform certain tasks. So to understand it in a very layman terms, I have to solve a quiz, right? Proof of work is basically solving a quiz, as simple as that, right? And what that quiz is, it's basically decided by the network, right? And more participants in the network, the tougher it gets to solve that quiz. So when everybody talks about, a lot of energy consumption in proof of work, it's just because of solving that particular quiz. Because solving that particular quiz is very, very hard, right? And to solve that, you need a huge amount of computational power. And that huge amount of computational power is actually, consuming a lot of energy, which directly or indirectly, posing a large impact on our environment. So that's what proof of work is all about, right? So it's all about solving a quiz in a very layman term, and that quiz is a very hard to solve and computationally very expensive and environmentally very expensive as well. So that's why, all these protocols, or everyone wants these protocols to move towards proof of stake. So in proof of stake, you don't have to solve any quiz, which means you don't need any computational power to solve that quiz. So if it's a proof of stake blockchain, I can run that particular node using my cell phone, right? I don't need to do anything else. Just I can run a node on cell phone, but I cannot run Bitcoin node on cell phone. For Bitcoin node, I need entire data house, data storage, or some kind of data centers, right? So in proof of stake, you need to stake platforms native tokens, and there can be multiple strategies of doing, like, proof of stake is a very broad term. There can be multiple strategies under proof of stake that how staking mechanism works, right? So one staking mechanism is used by Polygon, another staking mechanism will be used by Ethereum, another staking mechanism is used by BSC, then there's a staking mechanism which is used by EOS, Avalanche, and everyone. Like all these L2 or side chains, like everybody is using different versions of proof of stake. But the core idea of proof of stake is you need to stake the platform's core token or the native token. In case of Ethereum, it will be ETH. In case of Polygon, it's Matic. In case of Avalanche, it's AVX. In case of EOS, it's EOS, right? And now, based on your stakes, you get rights to validate a transaction or to mine a block, right? And if you mine, let's say, a faulty block, or if you start acting malicious, or if you start acting as a hacker, you will get a penalty from the network, right? And now that penalty differs on the mechanism that they implement. It can be, slashing your rewards. It can be slashing your stakes, right? So that's basically what proof of work or proof of stake are.
Fantastic. Just very eloquently explained. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, this leads on to the issues that you came across in terms of the price increase. Okay, started a chain of events in terms of various transactions on the blockchain, and therefore the gas prices. And for people, what gas prices is the cost of doing that particular transactions, and that skyrocketed, and therefore the transaction costs to validate any particular transaction was very, very high, which basically meant that lots of small participants, and you were talking about the ledger of, you selling me 100 apples, the equivalent of a small trader doing a transaction on the blockchain, the cost of doing that transaction electronically was more than the value of the 100 apples, for example. And as this problem worsened, you decided to solve it by developing an ecosystem. And this ecosystem that you came up was basically cushioning traders against these higher and increasing transaction costs. So can you just explain the environment where that was happening and why you came up with QuickSwap?
Yeah, definitely. Right. So like, as you said, the cost of 100 apples, right? It was less than the transaction cost to write that on a ledger, right? So that's why, like, if I want to do a 100 apple trade with you, I'm not going to use blockchain. I will maybe use a physical ledger or something, but I'll not use it. So that was the problem, right? And it was just, the tip of the iceberg in July, because at that time it was just $400 US. And we somehow knew that this is going to be in like thousands of dollars, like Ethereum will be $2,000 or $2,500. That's what we assumed by year end in 2020, right? So we realized, the future of sidechains or L2s, like, it's very bright, right? We realized at that time in July 2020. right? And I've been already working with Polygon team since 2018, even when their mainnet was not launched. They were Matic at that time, not even Polygon, right? So very closely working with Sandeep, Jayanti, and like everyone out there. I have like personally built some of the like first applications on Polygon when their mainnet launched, even
Yes.
on their beta version as well. So
just to go back to, for the benefit of our audience, is that majority of people are using what is called the Ethereum main chain, mainnet, and lots of token protocols on that to fit certain use cases. You had a lot of experience of working on that, but then you've now mentioned Polygon, and which were originally was known as Matic. Can you just explain to our audience what's the relationship between the protocols of Polygon, Matic, Polygon, and Ethereum? How does that work?
Yeah, cool. So like, Ethereum is the main blockchain, I would say, or in terms of layers, it's like layer one solution, or the parent solution, right? But it's not that scalable, because the core purpose of Ethereum is to, to be more secure, right? And provide a transaction capacity. That's what Ethereum does, right? But, as we discussed before, there's a certain level of scalability which Ethereum can achieve. And after that, it cannot, basically process your transactions. Like it can process 15 to 20 transactions per second, like, but that's it, right? So if you want to, build a large scale solutions on blockchain, which are comparable to, let's say, Visa or MasterCard, you cannot do it on Ethereum, because that's not why Ethereum was built. Ethereum was built majorly to solve, transaction problems and to solve security issues, right? P2P transactions, which are highly secure. So now there comes next layer of solutions, or next layer of blockchain, which is called L2 or side chains, right? Which are like these Polygon, BSC, like all other chains out there, right? So Polygon is like one of the best solutions out there, which is like layer 2 solutions and solve Ethereum scalability issues. So Polygon, like how I see it, it's like an Ethereum scalability solution, right? So it's built on top of Ethereum and uses the same security model as Ethereum, but it's more scalable than Ethereum, right? So it basically, it's a child chain, I would say. It's a child of Ethereum, which works on top of Ethereum. But now you can process hundreds of thousands of transactions per second if you go to Polygon. So now all these applications, let's say a gaming application, if I have to build a gaming application, I won't be able to build it on Ethereum because of the high transaction cost, low transaction time. But I can build it on Polygon because transaction cost, like they are in pennies, and the transaction time, like it's super fast, right? So that's what like layer one solution is, layer two solution is. So layer two solutions are the scalable version of layer one. You can say like, it's not that secure that as layer one solutions are, but it's much faster and much more scalable. So now if you're building an application and your primary goal is to be, highly secure, world's best security solution, then you should choose Ethereum. But if you are building an application and you have to process, let's say, hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, Ethereum is not for you. You should use a child chain, which is Polygon, right? Mm-hmm. So now, depending upon your use case of your product, you can choose whether you want to use Ethereum or you want to use Polygon.
I mean, what you said earlier is very, very interesting, that you mentioned that it's expensive to use certain types of protocols on blockchain. And obviously, it's damaging to the environment, because the proof that that transaction happened means that there is damage to the environment because of that. And therefore, along came Polygon, and Polygon is, as you described, a side chain, which is not very, it does thousands of transactions a second. It doesn't require an enormous amount of computing power. It's all, you can do it on your phone, that type of transaction. So that is like nirvana. Everybody's going, oh, this is great. We can start using that protocol, but it potentially comes at a price. There's a trade-off between security and speed. So tell us a little bit more about how has Polygon and the work that you've been doing with them when they were Matic managed that balance between security versus speed?
I mean, see, as I said before, right now, blockchain technology it's in very early stages, right? We are just seeing, maybe 0.01 version of blockchain right now, right? So definitely, if you need some scalability, you have to, go away with some security, or you have to do some compromises, right? You cannot have best of all worlds right now because technology is still very new. Maybe in coming years, we'll see that, right? So I think that's what Polygon did. So that's why, like I said, not only Polygon, like all the solutions out there, all like everyone out there apart from Ethereum, right? They have done some kind of compromise to provide scalability, because that's how technology works right now, right? So now it's up to you, how scalable product you want to build, how much secure you want to make it, right? And then you decide whether I want to choose Polygon or I want to choose Ethereum, right? But I would still say, like, out of all the solutions out there, Polygon is the best solution because it has hundreds of validators. Now the security concern is just because of the validators who are validating the transactions, right? So if number of validators are less, the protocol is less secure. If number of validators are high and more decentralized, it's highly secure, right? So that's like the major difference between, I would say, Ethereum and Polygon. Like in Ethereum, anybody can become, let's say, a miner right now, right? And there are like hundreds of thousands of miners out there working on top of Ethereum network, and then on Polygon, like there are certain like hundreds of validators, but then there are other chains which have 21 validators, right? Certain chains have 40 validators, right? So those are more centralized and like more risky. So like that's, the compromise that these chains had to make for the scalability. But I think, Polygon and their team, like they're strongly working to mitigate these problems, right? And bringing a lot of different solutions under their umbrella, like zk-Sync solutions, ZK rollup solutions, data availability layers, nightfalls, like tons of applications and tons of different products to solve just these problems, right?
Yeah. So talk about solving problems. What drove you to look at the issues that are available, look at things like Uniswap, etc., and then why did you develop QuickSwap? Tell us about that journey and why.
Hello, is it my internet or?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So what drove me into this basically was, I saw an opportunity, right? So, as I said, in July or August, we realized, that layer 2 solutions for side chains, they are coming up, in a big way, right? And that's when, like, we set up with, I was having some meeting or, some party with these Polygon guys. And that's when we realized if we want to make Polygon big, we need to create an entire ecosystem. And the first thing that's needed for an ecosystem is a decentralized exchange, right? Because if anyone who is building any product on top of blockchain, the first thing they need is a decentralized exchange, right? Because without decentralized exchange, nothing is going to work. So that's what we have seen as well. If any product is launching, like, to be very honest, it's launching with a token, right? And if they have a token, they want to list it somewhere, right? And that plays a decentralized exchange right now, because you cannot go to a centralized exchange right now and tell them, hey, my product is being launched, let's say a week ago, and I want to list my token on your platform, they'll kick you out. They won't list you, right? So that was the need, right? That is something which we realized. So that's why we started with QuickSwap. Guys, let's create a decentralized exchange on Matic. That time it was Matic, which has the same security features as Uniswap, because Uniswap was battle tested. Everybody was using it. It was handling billions of dollars of liquidity and volume. So we realized, why don't we simply pick Uniswap and build something on top of it on Matic network, right?
I mean, for the sake of just for the sake of our audience, can you just explain the difference between a centralized and a decentralized exchange, and then we can then go into the problems that you've solved with your company QuickSwap?
Yeah, definitely. So the main difference between a centralized and a decentralized exchange is who holds the custody of your tokens, of your assets. I think that's the major difference, right? Yeah, so if custody of your tokens or assets are being held by someone else or by some company, it's not with you, then that particular solution is a centralized solution. And if the custody of your assets, it's being held by you in one or the other form, it might be sitting in a smart contract, but you have the right to withdraw it from the smart contract at any point of time. So you, and only you can withdraw it, not someone else. That means you own the custody of that particular assets, even if it's in a smart contract, right? So if there is a solution in which you have the custody of the assets directly or indirectly, it's a decentralized solution, right? So an exchange in which you own your assets 100% and nobody else does, that's a decentralized exchange. And in an exchange where a certain entity or a centralized party owns your asset, right, then it's a centralized exchange, right? So that's like in a very simple terms.
Yes, exactly. So in terms of wanting to move to a what do you call a decentralized environment where Uniswap is one of the market leaders in that space. There's two things. You've got a problematic. What are the problems that you're trying to solve, and what is the solution with QuickSwap?
Right. So the problem we were trying to solve is we wanted to bring, let's say at that time, the target was we want to bring 1 million users to the blockchain. And we realized that's not going to happen on Ethereum, right? Because of all the issues that we have discussed so far, right? So that's when we realized we can, make this happen on Polygon, right? At that time, like Matic was the best layer 2 solution out there. So why not, grow this ecosystem? So that's why we deployed, QuickSwap on Matic. So in early stages, it was very problematic because the Matic technology was very new. It was not very well known the way it is right now. So there were no solutions out, no, infrastructure solutions out there, because to develop any application, you need an infrastructure, you need RPC providers, you need protocols to support your analytics platform and like a lot of stuff, right? So we did all on our own. We deployed our own analytics, we deployed our own graph protocols, we deployed our own RPC, provider services, like everything on top of it. But the main goal of doing all this, activity was to improve the user experience. And in my opinion, in blockchain, the biggest problem with UX is higher transaction cost at that time, higher transaction cost and low transaction speeds, like very, very low transaction speed. I had to wait for, let's say, a minute or so if I haven't provided, good gas fees, right? Or it might take an hour for the transaction to get confirmed. So the main focus of QuickSwap was to solve user experience problem. Until and unless all these user experience issues are there, forget about 1 million users, even 10,000 users won't come to blockchain, right? So that was the problem we were trying to solve. And we realized we can do it only through, Polygon at that time.
Yes. So using Polygon as your guide or your experience. So you've launched QuickSwap as a solution. You had no idea that Mark Cuban was using QuickSwap.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us a little bit more about where is QuickSwap now, and how many people are using it, and what's the growth like?
QuickSwap has been doing great since its inception in October 2020, right? So, we went up to a TVL of $1.5 billion at the its peak. Right now, in these markets, I think we are sitting somewhere around 500 or $550 million of liquidity. We are still the biggest exchange on Polygon, and volumes have been great. We did hit a 24 high of, not recently, like few months back, a $1.5 billion in trading volume, which is highest, I think, on all layer 2 solutions out there. And then we have, tons of backend integrations as well, right? It's not just a QuickSwap users, like even other protocols like, Telcoin, they are using, QuickSwap behind their scenes. And there are certain staking protocols who are using it, like all the aggregators out there, like they are using it. So like the growth rate so far has been phenomenal, right? Even I didn't know that Mark Cuban was using it as well, right? Like I came to know about it from like one of the blogs that he wrote, that he's using QuickSwap, which was like phenomenal. And the growth so far has been like just phenomenal.
So we've seen some phenomenal growth in the QuickSwap platform, but just take us through the user journey. That I'll give you a scenario. I'm a company. I want to tokenize my business. I do the whole process of developing my token economics, and I build out the use case, and I start my marketing, et cetera. What's the benefit of me using QuickSwap compared to other platforms?
Okay, so the biggest benefit of using QuickSwap is, on QuickSwap, we have very deep liquidity on all the pairs. You can there are tons of exchanges out there right now, right? Not just QuickSwap, but the benefit of QuickSwap is almost all the projects who are there on Polygon network, they are listed on QuickSwap, right? So we have a very deep diversity of all the projects out there, right? So it's a one-stop solution for a user to come and swap any token with any other token out there, right? So, and we have a very deep liquidity as well. And then, we do provide a lot of internal support to the projects who come and list on us. We do run a lot of liquidity mining incentives for them. We do run, a lot of setup programs. We do run, a lot of marketing campaigns with them, which, we haven't seen other platforms doing, right? Even, it doesn't matter to us whether it's a very small project or it's a very big project, right? We equally support everyone out there. So I think that's the biggest benefit of you coming to us instead of going to someone else.
That's very interesting. Now, obviously, with that level of visibility, that level of high liquidity, there are going to be challenges from a cybersecurity perspective when people start, trying to use the network in negative ways for their own gain and their own benefit. Can you give us some examples of how you've seen some of these challenges, met some of these challenges, and solved them?
Okay, so QuickSwap is like, it's very decentralized, right? First of all.
Yes.
So from a smart contract, like the blockchain perspective, we do not own our smart contracts. Like those contracts are definitely deployed by us, but right now, like there is no admin key or stuff which we own, right? So from that perspective, like we are pretty much secured. So there is nothing that somebody can hack or somebody can exploit because we do not have keys. Our contracts are, they are battle tested for years now. And like if counting on Uniswap as well, like it has processed hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So like I'm pretty sure that's the pretty safe piece of infrastructure that we have, and we were never had any problem in that particular space, right? Same was true with our our other infrastructure as well. So apart from contracts, the only other thing that we have is our front end, right? We do not have any back end stuff, like nothing of that sort. So we just have front end. We have set of smart contracts. Those smart contracts are connected to front end. So another piece of infrastructure was our front end, right? So our front end is also pretty secure because again, we do not use many centralized systems over there. We use IPFS to host our website, right? Again, it's a decentralized system and pretty much metal tested, and like everyone out there uses it. So the only one piece of centralized infrastructure that we use, or that we used to use, was basically GoDaddy to host our domain, right? So we used to use like GoDaddy to host our domain, and for DNS we are still using Cloudflare, right? And that was the bottleneck. I guess that was the bottleneck that we had, and I think everybody knows that recently somebody exploited that, right? 2 or 3 days back. But that exploit was not on QuickSwap. Like, just to clear that up, QuickSwap got not exploited. It was GoDaddy which was exploited, and by exploiting GoDaddy, they somehow got into our login credentials, like our accounts, not just like QuickSwap account. I think even SpiritSwap was affected by this. I think even HoneySwap was affected by this. And I'm sure like there are other protocols as well, but those protocols were not big enough. That's why they are not in news. But since like we have some volume, like certain liquidity, that's why we are in news, right? Because of that. But it was GoDaddy, I think, which was somehow hacked. Not sure like how it was hacked, because we are still in talks with them. But that was the only centralized point of failure we had. And our users were exploited because GoDaddy was exploited. So somebody went like got an access to our account. They changed the domain DNS settings to their own DNS, right? And then they, using their DNS, they basically published a fake version, or I would say a bugged version of the website, of our new website, wherein they diverted user funds to their wallet, right? That's what happened. But again, like I would like to reiterate this, like this was not QuickSwap exploit. This was like GoDaddy exploited, right?
Yes.
And to mitigate this, like we are moving away from GoDaddy. We are not going to use GoDaddy anymore, because like we don't trust GoDaddy anymore, right? So we are moving to a different provider out there, which I would not like to name here, because a lot of people will like start looking into it. But yeah, we are not using GoDaddy anymore. We are using a provider which is much more secure than GoDaddy.
Yes, but I mean, these things are bound to happen. As you know, you've got legacy platforms and legacy systems that are trying to keep up with the developments and growth of these type of platforms. It is a challenge, and these challenges will always arise. But in terms of the future, where do you see QuickSwap in 5 years' time?
I mean, see, 5 years is a very long time in this industry, right? But still, where we see like we still want to solve a lot of user experience problems, because the core goal of building QuickSwap was to solve user experience problems. We have solved the first level of user experience problems, right? And we have done a lot of work in that industry. Now we want to solve next levels as well, right? Which is providing much better trade rates to the users, developing new algorithms to figure out liquidity providers problems, right? So Uniswap v3, they have tried solving one part of the problem, right? Which is like concentrated liquidity. So now traders get the best trade out of it. But that particular algorithm, like it's bad for liquidity providers, because on QuickSwap V3, a lot of liquidity providers, they lose a lot of money even after high volumes, right? Because it's not good for them. They have to continually manage this, change their position, change their ticks, right? And then only it's like beneficial for them. So we want to solve all these problems, figure out what's next and what can be fixed in the DeFi, because like I personally feel DeFi is still its very early stages. Like it's DeFi 1.0, right? And we have to see DeFi 10.0 in next 5 years,
Yes.
right? So that's the goal of QuickSwap, to be there to solve all these user experience problems and stuff. And we want to be completely decentralized, right? I mean, like we want to move all our domains, like all pieces of our infrastructure, like they are decentralized, like just one piece, which is domain, which is not decentralized. Like our goal is to make it decentralized as well. Maybe use ENS, maybe use unstoppable domains and stuff, but to be like 100% decentralized.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the most important thing about QuickSwap is your client base, the people that use QuickSwap. And how do you communicate with them?
Okay, so there are multiple options to communicate, with our community. So like our BD and marketing team, like they are like super active. Like they are, I think, one of the best in the industry. So we communicate with our community through Telegram, through Twitter. We do have Discord as well. We do have our Reddit as well. And we are going to launch our own forums as well very soon. Maybe next couple of weeks, we'll have our own forum. So like there are multiple, communication mediums out there. So we are most active on Telegram and Twitter, but like we are active on Discord and Reddit as well.
Sure. I mean, I did see in your profile sometime, building a way of communication with, or a forum for communicating with your audience. I think you worked on or created Chatty some time ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. Like maybe our BD team or marketing team might have worked on that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. No, but just that the technology of chat room and all these type of environments, they're pretty classic. But it's trying to meet the demand of dealing with your customers, particularly in a forum space, particularly in a decentralized environment. It's important that you deal with their issues, or that their concerns, guidance, helping them to do transactions, and understanding and education. Education is very, very important. Do you have a very strong education within QuickSwap, that teaching people how to use it to bring more users into the framework?
I mean, as you said, like I 100% agree with you. Education is something which is lacking in this space, because we are, I mean, like I personally feel this particular industry, like blockchain industry, since its very early stages, it was built by developers, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like any new projects or product, that was coming into the space, that was done either by mathematicians or by developers, right? And these guys like me, developers and mathematicians, they are not very good communicators. Like if I have to explain something to someone, I'll explain more it in a technical terms, right? Which I think like is good enough, but that's not good enough for someone listening to me. So I think we definitely lack a lot of education in this industry. And I think that's the problem why a lot of people are not coming in, because they are afraid. And when we are not able to tell them properly, that you don't need to be afraid. This technology is definitely new, but you don't need to be afraid about it. Mm-hmm. So at QuickSwap, we try to educate people using different memes, I would say, funny videos. If you go to our Twitter, you will find, lots of Dragon Spy, Professor Dragon and stuff, right? So we try to teach people more about our platform, about cryptocurrency, about blockchain, about decentralized exchanges, DeFi in general, using those memes. Because like from our study, people or audience, they understand things better when it seems funny to them, or like when it's in the video form as well, right? So that's what we try to do right now. Like a lot of such videos, a lot of such, interactive sessions. We do a lot of Twitter spaces and stuff. Right now.
So that actually leads on to something very interesting, is NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Okay.
Right.
Very, very, very in the news, very much hype. People are very interested. But in layman's terms, can you explain what an NFT is? And if in terms of QuickSwap, what percentage of the traffic that you're getting is NFT based?
Okay. So first of all, at QuickSwap, we do not support NFTs, right? So QuickSwap, it's just fungible tokens or ERC20 tokens. Now, to tell you a difference, like it's very important to understand a difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token. Yeah. Now, let's get back to the real world scenario, right? So when you are holding, let's say a a $10 note or a $1 note, right? And let's say I'm holding a $1 note. So both notes, like they are two different notes, but still they hold the same value. And somebody else holding $1 note, still they hold the same value, right? So, all those assets which have the same value for same amount are basically fungible in nature, because I can exchange my $1 note with you, and you can give your $1 note to me, and we still hold the same value, exactly the same value, right?
Yeah,
That's what fungible
serial numbers. They just have different serial numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same. Right. Yes. So that's what fungible tokens are all about, right? Where we can exchange without, where all the properties of an assets are same, not even one property is different. That's what fungible assets are. Now, when it comes to non-fungible assets, so even if one property of a particular asset is a different from, same like asset of like say different asset of a same class, I would say, then it's non-fungible in nature. To give you an example, let's assume I'm going to buy a land in Washington, DC near White House or somewhere, right? So that, okay, and let's say it's 100 square feet land, and another land I'm going to buy in Miami somewhere, again like 100 square feet land, right? So those two pieces of land, the size is still the same, but these two pieces of land have different properties. One is in states like DC, another one is in Miami, right? Near White House, not near White House. So this change in property will basically result in different valuation, right? So these assets are called non-fungible in assets. Again, like they are belonging to the same asset class, which is land, but they have different properties, right? So any asset which belongs to the same class or same category, but have different properties, even if the single property is different, those assets are called non-fungible in nature. Because now I cannot simply ask you, Hilton, you give me your 100 feet land near White House, and I'll give you my 100 feet land, Miami. I mean, there ought to be some difference in the value, right? So we need to exchange that particular value as well, right? So it's not as easily exchangeable as it was to exchange any US dollar. So that's what non-fungible tokens are, right? Or non-fungible assets are, right? So like more than token, it's an asset. Like token is a misnomer, I would say. Like it should be asset, right? So all asset classes like arts or land details or some kind of records, or some kind of, let's say, diamonds, I would say, or fishes, like all these assets come under non-fungible assets.
Yes, absolutely. What about your own identity?
Sorry. Yeah, definitely. Identity as well. Identity as well, right? Yeah. I'm like, it's a non-fungible asset.
Exactly. You can't, unless you're a complete digital twin of yourself.
Exactly. Unless it's a clone. But even clone might have some differences over some period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
very, very. So that's the future, is that we do have the technology to really, in a digital world that separates us from everybody else with technology. So we can use NFTs for our identity. We can use NFTs to differentiate particular assets.
Right.
Okay. We can use tokens to provide some form of utility, general utility, because those are fungible around, ecosystems that we have. We can use it to buy things, change things, consume things, or whatever. So it's a very, very exciting space that we all know that we are part of, and we want to bring that to a larger audience. So on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been very, very interesting, Sameep. You've been a great education to all of us to bring forward your ideas and the problems that you have solved, particularly with QuickSwap. But if people want to know a little bit more about you, can you just quickly highlight how best they can, your URL and your social media channels if you want people to engage with you?
I mean, like, you can reach out to me on, I would say, Twitter, or you can reach out to me on Telegram, Reddit, right? And like my ID everywhere is just same, like it's Sameep SI, right? SAMEEPSI. So if you go to Twitter, you'll type this out, you'll find me. If you go to Telegram, you type this out, you'll find me. If you go to GitHub, you'll type this out, you find me. So almost like on social media platforms, my ID is same. So just need to remember my ID and go to the platform of your choice and you can contact me.
Brilliant. Sameep, thank you very much indeed for your time. This interview we will be publishing on our platforms, particularly under citiesabc.com and also syndicated across our platforms of openbusinesscouncil.org, fashionabc.org, and also our other platforms, Intelligent HQ, Traders DNA, and our metaverse platform that we are working on at this present time, which is effectively citiesabc.com. So thank you very much indeed. I'm Hilton Supra, and thank you very much, Sameep Singaria, for your time. And we look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you, Hilton. Thanks for having me here. It was nice talking to you, and I loved this conversation. Thank you. Thanks a lot.